payment before by HRN, and we've seen the buff Hal pick, and maybe there's a little bit of back and forth between the teams there, but this is River Center. This is where TSM relocated themselves, having lost that battle in the majority in the last tournament, but there's a team called Season who I believe are going to be contesting them. So it's going to be a huge moment at the start of this game. If that happens, of course, things can change. Always subject to change here on Kings Canyon, but game one is live. We're underway here for the finals.
And I'm so excited for this because North America hits just that little bit different. It's like you go to one restaurant, you have your European meal, and you head on straight over to another restaurant and you get your North American burger right down you. Honestly, like, I just love watching North American Apex, and I hope there is contesting right at the start of the game because it means you've just got that instant fight, you've got that instant action, and we'll see whether people have got the bottle to actually go toe-to-toe with TSM.
It's going to be an interesting one to see. We can see the dropship going from south to north as well. So teams who are dropping at the bottom of Kings Canyon here, a few seconds advantage on their rotation, being able to get their feet on the floor as quickly as possible. Speaking of which, TSM hitting the ground running here. And they look like they've got the wipe almost onto Season here. One more player alive for them to try and find. But TSM, the perfect start for them. Imperial How, no surprise to see him in the kill feed.
I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. Even though you knew and you speculated and you said, I think Season are going to be dropping near TSM. If I'm any team in Apex, the last team I want to be dropping anywhere close to is TSM. Like, why would you take that early fight? Like, please, I hope they don't drop on them again. That's not gone well for them whatsoever. Some nice early kills. I know we caught it a little bit late, but TSM showing that they are not terrified of any team that's going to be dropping next to them. And they didn't get the wipe, but they did get 2 kills.
They did get 2 kills, and as you say, it's more the fact that they got the dominance. They've established themselves on their drop spot, and it's one of those now, if you're Season, you're thinking, do we want to do this again? It was a pretty clean fight for TSM. We really didn't put up a struggle. We didn't get any knocks, and now they're playing as a solo. Their rotation's going to be messed up. But let's just take that into consideration as well. Something we were talking about yesterday, where even if you are contested on drop and you win the fight, those extra seconds you have to spend looting, taking those fights, and trying to make sure that you're the last players alive when the guns have stopped firing, stops your rotation time, slows things down a little bit. And for a team like TSM, we always mention it, right? Love to rotate early, love to get center zone. It can affect them in more ways than one.
Yeah, I guess the only benefit is if you find an Evo shield and you get the chance to just buff that shield up a little bit with the damage you're potentially doing in that early fight. But the chances of getting that Evo shield in that fight is pretty rare because you're usually going to have that fight often without a shield or maybe even just a white. So, yeah, there are some benefits, but I agree. I think there's a lot of negatives to it, but hopefully it doesn't detriment them too much, as everyone else is kind of just among their merry business. And we might have a little bit of an engagement here. It is a bit of a long-range battle at the moment. CSB just taking a little bit of fire, but it's not close enough to cause too much worry, and I think they're going to dip out and look to rotate.
So although we are seeing early scuffles here, and we've had a look at some of our big name teams like Complexity, we've seen a little bit of Liquid point of view as well. No real big fights outside of that one, of course, that we did see early on, but 20 squads still remaining, and we do get a look at that beacon as well, and you can see that Salvage heavily involved, Market involved, and also the little town outside of water treatment just to the west of that involved. You can see a couple of pings where teams think that they might be finishing, or areas they want to rotate to, but an interesting circle to start things off with. No clear distinguished area that you feel this one could be pulling to.
Yeah, I kind of like going to this southernmost part of the map just to try and stay as far away from all the action of everyone rotating into that potential final circle. It depends really how you want to play as a team. Like, do you want to be getting into those fights, trying to pick up some KP in the first game, or just take things a little bit slow, feel out the lobby, feel how everything is going to be going? We saw yesterday in Europe a couple of teams that started slow, didn't potentially play to their best in the early games, then pick things up a little bit later when they got more comfortable on World's Edge and they started to warm up. So game one is always a little bit iffy, and maybe you see some things that are a little bit different than you will when we get later into the lobbies.
Expensive Agents were feeling pretty comfortable there. They were set up in Crossroads, and another team just across from them, Team PHM. Petty Boss and Moose Gosh, who did get knocked there and will be revived and helping, putting that portal down to maybe get his team out of trouble here and try and reset this fight, get their meds back up and get those shields back up to be able to re-engage. But a couple of teams already making those early rotations around Crossroads, around Salvage, and these are the places you want to be holding down. This is where you're going to feel comfortable for a little bit longer in this game. And everyone else is having to work their way in, well, there's already teams set up inside here, so it's going to be a difficult zone to try and break into.
Yeah, we're going to start to see some more scuffles now, I think, as people are starting to rotate from the north side of the map down to the south as the circle will begin to close. And you can see a few teams still straggling out quite far northeast and northwest. I mean, the team's still at the pit. That's not going to be a great place to be. Maybe try and rotate through bunker, but you're always a little bit worried someone might try and gatekeep you there. But because of the beacon being found, because everyone really should know where this next circle is going to be, we are seeing a lot of early rotations indeed.
We're also seeing a little bit of early crypto action here up on the drone, scouting out all these fights that are going down and maybe looking to hit an EMP and then initiate a push off of the back of that. And you can see the Watson fences. Well, if that EMP goes off, they're not going to be long for this world, as of course the EMP will be taking those down, allowing that push to come in. But one thing that sort of jumped out to me immediately just seeing that map overhead is how quickly a lot of these teams have already rotated into where that second circle will be closing. And it was only about 6 or 7 teams, I would say, outside of it, maybe looking to play edge with their playstyle that they're trying to initiate in comparison to those teams who have rotated early. And it just looks like North America really want to get down to business here, rotate early, get inside of where that circle is going to be finishing.
Yeah, I think that circle just allows for a lot of early rotations because it is such a condensed area as well. There's a lot of places in the southern area of the map where you can kind of sit, you can hide, you can get inside a building, you can set up base campers. Well, there is going to be a little bit of an engagement here, and that is going to be a straight down, easy peasy, just like that as we jump over. Like that kill, easy as you like.
Yeah, Crispy Bacon. He gets taken down. A bit overcooked in that particular circumstance. We see a Wraith flying in now, going to have to hit the queue and try and get back out of dodge, and Portal will go down. Look like maybe a third-party opportunity was coming in there as we jump on board with 2 big here. Nox, a controller player, of course, alongside Bowser and Tech on that Crypto. We know all about Tech and how he really has mastered Crypto and every single facet of the character and what he can do with that drone, the EMP. And even, yes, in the last tournament, we actually saw a play, if you saw on Twitter, where his teammates arc-starred that drone and then he drove that up onto the team that were above him and got big crack, and an easy squad wipe. So they really do know every single way to utilize Crypto, the drone, and everything that he brings to the party.
Yeah, the creativity we've seen as actually our first squad has just been eliminated from the battlefield, and that's always going to be an interesting situation when you're down to 19, but it's been quite a while, to be fair. I was surprised that we didn't see more teams eliminated earlier. I think we've just seen another go down. TSM picking up some kills on the kill feed. Team Liquid now setting up here on the edge of that green circle you see on the mini-map. So down to just 18 squads, and things starting to heat up here.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see where the ring pools are. As we mentioned yesterday, a lot of unpredictability now on that 3rd, 4th, and particularly 5th and 6th rings. Those extreme pulls away from where a lot of players are expecting them or previously would have predicted them to go, has really thrown the cat among the pigeons as far as setting up center circle where they want to try and rotate, and you are going to see teams forced to fight where previously they might have been a little bit more comfortable just sitting in a position and looking to pick up KP as teams do rotate in. But speaking of rotating in, that's something that Liquid are going to have to do here. They are inside that first circle, as you can see, so they're going to be comfortable for a couple more minutes. But Liquid looking to play edge, and just need to shout out to Casper as well. Great to have him back on this Liquid lineup, competing in full force. We love to see Liquid performing. Shout out to Hotsick, of course, for filling in for him in the meantime.
Yeah, there's a few teams that have opted to go for that early rotation. Others are just sitting on the edge and maybe hoping to pick up a bit of KP, as others are rotating in late from the northern side of the map. But the teams that are rotating in from the northern side of the map, they are also... I mean, it's one of those lobbies, Mark, where you don't really want to take a fight against many people because you know full well that in any 3v3 engagement, they still could take you down. Like, not that many people are going to be confident about going into every single fight. Yes, okay, your TSM are probably confident because they are those style of players. Like, they'd be more than happy to take those fights. But it was the same as Europe yesterday. Like, there are so many teams that have the potential to win this tournament, and it's a very scary factor when you all have to share the same map.
Well, it's a dude's night out, and it is a dude's night out tonight. As Fallout Jameson, Gaskin and myself will be driving you through the action, but it's also a dude's night out for this team. Fighting around water treatment at the moment. They've got about 1:40 to make their way in, but you can see on their composition as well. Running that Gibraltar means they will probably be favouring those edge fights, as we see Euresis Daycare now coming under quite a lot of fire themselves, and a difficult rotation out for them as well. As you can see that they're going to have to run through that one door, and if there's a team up on Cage, they could potentially cause them a few problems, but the scan's going to come in here from Metro, and it looks like they are safe to make that rotation. However, a little bit of work to be done for them, and that's because AA not OP, aim assist not OP. They're going to be trying to hold them out.
Try being the key word. Are they going to be successful is the real thing here. Both, of course, having the Bloodhound, just trying to get scans on one another, trying to get as much information as possible. Whilst they have to be aware of each other, they also have to look ahead of the pack and look at where they need to be rotating in, because they're going to be walking into probably a few teams just gatekeeping on the edge of that next circle. A couple of teams have lost a player or two. And as you can see, you like that, mate? Well, that's 2 players that have gone down. No banners to be had just yet.
And Rakinishi's going to just be chilling down here. We'll get the ult charged up from the charge tower as well, so he'll have the defensive bombardment. But as you say, no banners in hand. Having to work his way back to maybe try and get those back in the game. But I'm kind of glad that I've got you alongside me to say you like that, mate.
You like
so we
mate?
can say it properly. Do you know what I mean? Like, Matt Pickett, he's like, all right, mate. All right, Matt Pickett. Do you know what I mean? Give me a prowler. I got him. Nice.
And
Knocked
I'm going to
him.
be honest,
Push.
problem is, if Fallout and Jameson, they try, they'll put on some terrible British accent when
They'll
they say
sound
it, but,
Australian.
You
They'll
like
sound-
that, mate? And it's like, no.
They'll sound Australian. It's what happens. Like,
Just
whenever...
yeah.
Anyway, back to the game. Team Solo Mid, TSM. See some stats on the Bloodhound. Of course, Bloodhound is a new addition to this lineup. You know, Abrelelli, famous for running that Pathfinder for so long, and this new composition, and it is new for TSM, remember, with the comparative time that they ran that original composition compared to what the time they have on this new composition. Looking to get into a position here just outside of water treatment in this little town just to the west of it that we mentioned a little bit earlier, but looking pretty healthy at the moment. You're looking across the shields, and they're looking pretty healthy as far as meds are concerned as well. So TSM feeling pretty comfortable, and they also have those KP on the board, remember. Gold triple take in the hands is always going to be very deadly as well. As you can see, Liquid look like they're hunting out some prey who are trying to rotate late on the edge of circle.
This is what Liquid have been waiting for this whole time. They set up early, they set on the edge, they were waiting for teams to actually join them, and finally the prey has arrived. But are they going to be actually able to take down these kills, get this KP on the board? You can see how aggressive they're being. They want to get this free KP. They know other teams will also be looking to do the same. They're doing some real damage at the moment, but they've managed to get one down. Can they find the rest of the team?
The question is, who is the other team who are shooting from the other angle? Because I saw Complexity pop up in the kill feed, and I think the Liquid are a little bit wary of the fact that that might have been Complexity. Speaking of which, surprise, surprise, look at that. Complexity are that team who are on the other side just patrolling the edge of circle, and a scary, scary thing to run into is a Cole tag if you see them in front of you. Speaking of which, it'll be Rakanishi who'll be taking down the last player alive that we saw just a few moments ago, and that'll be another KP on the board here for Liquid. Complexity, though, looking to put the pressure on now. Hemlock in the hands of Reptar. Of course, Complexity kind of feigned and introduced this Bloodhound meta and really have been able to put it to use fantastically well. But one thing that always impresses me about Complexity, we always talk about their aggression, how they love to take fights, etc. They're just as smart at knowing when the fight isn't good, when they don't have the advantage and choosing not to push.
Yeah, and it's about having that knowledge, right? And it's the same, I would say, for TSM, who also look like they're in a little bit of a scuffle at the moment. TSM were always one of those teams who knew where to be in the right place at the right time. It's a big damage coming out of Reps. Absolutely huge from him, and he'll get the revive. TSM will survive. New kill leader. Oh, Hero Hell's just gone down. He has been managed to pick up the beacon there.
Yeah, it looks like Snipedown has 1 HP. That grenade was absolutely huge. Snipedown will get away, but they have lost Hal. However, top kill leaders, you look at them right now. Reps with 3, Hal with 3, and Snipedown with 2 as well. So like you mentioned, 8 kills on the board here. That's 8 points already solidified for TSM. However, 15 squads still alive. Placement points maybe not looking too hot for them, as it looks like Reps is now the last player alive. It has the Watson making friends with the Rock.
And what I was, just like Golden Boy does, I was saying that realistically, TSM are one of those teams who used to be so good about placing themselves in the late game, knowing where to be, knowing where to set up, but now with the circles being a little bit more random, you need to be able to take fights. And Snipedown being added to the squad, they can take those fights. You can see already 8 KP on the board. Unfortunately, the third party probably came in there, they found themselves a little bit vulnerable, but at least Reps has been able to get away now. Hopefully he can rat out a little bit, maybe get a beacon back, and maybe he can get some placement points alongside the insane amount of KP they've already picked up this game.
So Euresis Daycare in a fight here on Market, and the team on top is Sentinels. Now Sentinels, one of those teams who I think are always on the precipice, right? They're always on the edge of being in that first place conversation, before tournament start. However, always just come up a little bit short. And I just feel like they've got a tournament to win here, potentially. If they win that tournament, we always talk about them going forward as being a #1 team. But as I say, still waiting for that elusive tournament win here. But with Retzi back on the lineup, back on the Wraith, I really do feel like this is a powerhouse lineup. It's kind of a sleeping giant, right? With the Xenox and Retzi coming back together recently. With the addition of Crust, of course. A lot of talent on this lineup as Reps now desperately trying to stay alive, trying to get his interception pylon down to avoid that grenade. Gonna have to dodge and dive, but TSM eliminated.
It was just one of those things where I couldn't get the pylon down because just nowhere to put it, unfortunately. So a lot of kills from TSM. They had like, what, 8 KP, but unfortunately, in terms of placement points, only going to be the 1. So they're going to finish on 9 points, which isn't bad for the first game, but certainly I'm sure they know they could have done a little bit better if they had got further into this game, as Solidified also in a little bit of trouble. Just a nice, friendly portal to make sure they can get that one up and pick up the revive. Not necessarily an aggressive kidnap that we've seen so much, but instead you can use it to actually, yeah, you can help you. What is a friendly kidnap though? It's not really a kidnap, is it?
It's a cuddle nap. That's what we call that from now on when you portal out your teammate. But Solifide doing what they could do in that situation to make sure that they stay up out of full complement, but only for a few moments here because Muffins is coming under all sorts of fire from a couple of players. Gets the thermite down, has to jump back into the friendly portal. But the question is, will it be friendly enough for him to survive as he tries to pop that Phoenix kit? Around 6 seconds left up till he is back to full health.
It's probably just a rescue mission, but Cuddle Nap has a certain ring to it. Does get the Phoenix kit off, and now he will retreat, but he did see another player going into that building, so instead of going inside, he jumps straight to the top, and he knows full well he has to get out of dodge here. Still 13 squads remaining, so he needs to get into the top 10 if he wants to pick up an extra placement point, but it doesn't look like he's going to get very far. Indeed, gets taken out of the sky as he's zipping up, and they'll finish in 13th, so just the 1 placement point for them. But now we start to see the teams get closer and closer as round 4. That circle is closing, and that circle is getting very small indeed.
Yeah, you can see it pulling to the south side of Salvage as well. So teams like Sentinel's going to have to fight their way through the lobby here to try and find themselves a safe spot inside. 5th circle, the portal's going to go down here, so they'll have a way to get a little bit closer to it. However, obviously there's going to be teams in front of them, as you can see from those fences down. But it looks like Sentinel's happy to maybe look to take a fight here. They're going to have to do so. A portal in front of them as well would indicate there's going to be a team hanging around this situation. The defensive bombardment going to be using an aggressive way here to try and clear the way for them. You can see a few hits as well as Retzi's actually going to be taken down. However, big hits is going to allow them to maybe pick up a few KP on their way forward.
Nice shots there with the G7 scout, but needs to make sure he tries to get with the teammate. They need to support one another at this time as we're down to just 9 squads. I think Complexity have lost a couple of players off screen as well, so some big teams losing some big players, and now aggression coming out from NRG here. Jumps in with the Eva 8 and we'll get that finish.
Yeah, NRG looking absolutely phenomenal in this game, #1. Lots of KP on the board for them, and whenever you're taking out Complexity, you know that you're feeling good. As we join the tanning salon here, it's Team Liquid who'll let to get their tan on, and they look like they're stuck in a little bit of difficult situation. How'd you get out of this one, IGL?
I mean, you hate to see it, but there is a little bit of a rotation round. Maybe with the Wraith portal they'll be able to get in, but they need to time it perfectly because people will probably keep an eye on that spot as they know full well someone could have got trapped with how that circle moved in. Sentinels down to just 2 then. They weren't able to keep the 3rd alive. With 8 squads remaining. There is still possibility for them to do something here, but they're close to the next circle. You can see the top kill leaders on your screen there as well. 2 of them from TSM who were eliminated in that top 15 spot.
So HRN still involved and holding down circle as well. They are in the power position here. They are controlling everything. You can see they've got fences up and they've got a good perimeter around the zone as well, so they've really established themselves and they're really not letting anyone push in whatsoever as we see Liquid try desperately to make their move in now. Nocturna will go into the void and should be able to just about get that portal down and get Team Liquid involved. However, can he pop this medkit just in time? And I think they've actually snuck up behind HRN now. So a great portal here, late from Team Liquid, could put them in a great position for this endgame if they can win this fight.
Yeah, I was saying people would have been watching behind them, but maybe they weren't actually aware that someone was going to come from behind. The Mastiff doesn't connect. One member of Team Liquid has fallen. Casper is slightly weak, but they may have won that engagement as Dudes Night Out are also having a little bit of a pop-off here. We're down to just 6 squads as people being eliminated moving into this next circle.
Yeah, Gibraltar Bubble's going to go down. I think the Liquid were actually eliminated in that fight. Speaking of being eliminated, Crust gets deleted momentarily there just as the bubble goes down. They're going to have to get that revive, and the gold bag was actually on Crust on the Gibraltar, so he'll be up. Only a slither of health. He's going to have to pop those meds. As speaking of popping, we're going to be seeing the Bloodhound ultimate being popped as shots are going to be ringing in here across Kings Canyon towards this endgame. 3 squads remaining now. One of the dudes night out, one of the teams that Jameson really had his eye on coming into this finals here for the Americas. One of those underdog teams trying to finish off these knocks, trying to thirst those KP. Only 5 seconds left on this ult to try and pop a scan, maybe just to see where those last teams are going to be holding up.
So NRG lost one as well. Sentinel still in this fight, but they're down to just 2, so it's certainly Dudes Night Out in the power position right now with all 3 members, and they've got yet another knock naff and falls from NRG, so NRG down to just 1 at this point, and Sentinels, they're just waiting, Mark. They are biding their time, but they're going to have to take a 2 versus 3 fight coming into this final circle.
So there is the final down. Finish, and I think there's just another player from NRG holding up behind those knockdown shields. Trying to survive as long as possible, hoping these 2 other teams are going to engage before he can jump in. It's a 2v3v1, I believe, in this situation. And now it's just a 2v3, and here comes the push coming in from Sentinels towards the endgame. Big shots with the Mastiff for 70 and an 89 as well. However, it's going to be Crust who goes down, and it all falls onto the shoulders now of Senox, the last player alive here for Sentinels.
Yeah, it's a 1 versus 2. He's managed to find one, tries to get the finish onto the other to get maybe the shield swap, but I don't think it's going to work out for them. This is a really tough 2 versus 1 for him, and unfortunately, he's on the low ground. Dudes Night Out, they have the high ground, they have everything. Another shield swap, though. Maybe that can be the saving grace here.
Yeah, big shots with the wingman as well is going to force Alves to recharge his shields. Luckily for him, he has the gold armor, so it's not going to take him too long to do so. So a phenomenal effort there from Senox in the end game, but Dudes Night Out, not a team that you would imagine being up there right at the start of this tournament, take game number 1 and announce themselves to this lobby. A great performance from them, a great execution. In the end, they got the job done, and an interesting first game there, Dan. Lots of points on the board for a lot of teams.
Yeah, we saw a lot of KP for some of the big teams, some of the big hitters that we would expect, but they were eliminated early. They just weren't able to get the KP and then get out and get back into a comfortable position because it was such a southern pull as well. Everyone was just an early rotate. Everyone was condensed, and you were bound to get 3rd party, 4th party, 5th party. There was just so much action as we got into those final few circles.
Well, Dudes Night Out take home game number 1. It's Dudes Night In, though, and we need to invite our fellow dudes back to join us to break down the action from that game number 1. Kings Canyon never disappoints as far as action is concerned. Fallout Jameson is a lot of fun, but maybe a little bit of an underdog coming up in game 1.
Yeah, Dudes Night Out, this is their official handshake logo here. Dudes Night In inside the dropship. I like that. It's like a slumber party. This is the 2nd night in a row that we've had a chance to all hang out and talk about some Apex. But no, jokes aside, Dudes Night Out, the big game. You always love the pro teams and their team names in Apex, that's for sure. Sentinels, though, looking good. So we called Complexity, TSM, and Rogue to win it. In the end, it's actually Sentinels, the other big organization that gets 2nd place, and Dudes Night Out, a team that probably none of us would have predicted to win the first game with a strong start. Onset, Gaskin, before I let you guys go, any final thoughts of what stood out the most to you in game number 1?
I think TSM have dominated that drop spot. I'd be surprised to see them contested again with how easy that fight was. So I think, although the placement wasn't great, I think TSM will be happy with establishing the fact that they got their drop spot and also the KP they got on the board.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of early rotates. I think that's going to say a lot about this lobby in general. They want to get into that circle, but then they're more than happy to take that fight as the circle gets a little bit smaller, and that's why we saw so many engagements at once. But you just need to be watching your back, because as soon as you take that fight, there's another team just waiting to 3rd party, and it is absolute chaos, and I bloody love it.
I love it. Great stuff, guys, as always. Thanks again. Enjoy a well-deserved break here as you guys have a marathon ahead of you. I'm going to say goodbye to Gaskin and Onset and bring in Jamerson, the mind himself. Well, I'm just excited to hear what he's got. Jamerson, I'm not even going to ask you a question. I'm just going to say I'm going to ask you a question. 3 things that stood out to you the most. I'm going to put you on the spot. 3 things that stood out to you most in that game. What were they?
So first off, we said that the wild cards were going to be playing a major factor into this, and Dudes Night Out was definitely one of them. But first off, it starts off in that full fight, TSM versus Season here, and this is really important because this slows down TSM's rotation, where they're forced to rush down River for their rotation, and then they tried to take a position on the southern side of the map. They had a great spot over basically at Water Treatment Town to the northwest of Water Treatment. But that's where they ultimately ended up getting third party by Dudes Night Out, who also had a very similar rotation path. They had a very far one, right? The ring pulls all the way to the southwest side. I believe they're an eastern team that comes from swamps, and so they had a very long rotation. They were able to find that third party timing onto TSM, and because of the natural funnel on the northern side of the map, you saw a lot of fights taking place up there on the north, over by Market, over by a lot of other positions like that. And so Dudes Night Out were just prime in position with so much great utility to utilize into that last fight, because they were in the less dense, less populated part of the southern side of this map.
I love it. Of course, TSM, Onset talked about whether or not they're going to be dropped down again in game number 2. That's a discussion point we'll have to give. But now that we started heading into this late game, it was Sentinels that really did a great job actually staying alive. They lost one member early, were able to make it to the top 2. NRG, another team that was in there. Any surprises there?
Definitely not. Definitely not. We saw Sentinels playing this a little bit slower than I think a lot of us were expecting, but they played it in a very measured style, and so I liked seeing that. But this is what we were talking about just beforehand. You saw that funnel on the northeast side because of the way the map, the way the ring pulled down so heavily down here to the southwest. You have a lot of teams just naturally funneling there, and that's where the majority of the fights took place. That's where it was a war of attrition amongst all these players. But take a look at how impressive Dudes Night Out were in this fight. Even though they had this man advantage up against Sentinels, they gave them the proper respect that Sentinels duly deserve there. And so they decided to, of course, full heal up and then take that fight 2v1 and just finish it all off for the win.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Congratulations and a well done job from Duplex. Wow, look at that. 6-kill Wraith with almost 1,500 damage. That's a way to start. Rolders playing the Jibby right behind with 1,400 damage. And of course, Aves, the Bloodhound meta in North America is real. 1 kill, 1 assist, 1,600 damage. As you see, Bloodhound, he knew I said his name. He gave me a little wave right there. Thanks, Bloodhound. Beautiful augmented reality shot you got on screen right now. And congrats to Dudes Night Out. And I want to just double click on what you said in that last moment there. The way that they played that 2 versus 1, I'm a firm believer in playing your numbers. And that's a theme that really doesn't matter what esport, what game you're playing. I come from Gears of War, a different title where it's so incredibly important. But Counter-Strike, Valorant, Halo, it doesn't matter what game you're playing. Playing your numbers correctly and using that numbers advantage to your advantage is so incredibly crucial. And that was veteran play right there at Dudes Night Out. It's so easy to get a little bit eager, a little bit excited, want to just finish that last individual and stop the roach, if you will, to end it. But you got to play smart. You got to recognize, hey, just do damage slowly but surely, and you're going to end up on top. So just want to double click there. Very well done from them. In particular, anything else that stood out to you before we get ready to throw to a quick break here, Jamerson?
One thing that did actually that did stand out to me, even though season ended up going down, I want to say around 10th place. I don't quite remember. Well, that's still better than TSM at that point. I think let's take a look at the scoreboard. Season ended up getting 4 kills along with 9th place finish. While even though TSM beat them on the drop there, wow. Okay, still ended up with 8 kill points, but finished off in 14th. So they're sitting kind of similarly. TSM still has, I think, more overall points, but that's impressive to see.
That's exactly right. NRG in 3rd, Rogue in 4th. So Rogue continues with at least a solid showing right there. 2 kills and 1,200 damage total. But look at the amount of damage that was done by Dudes Night Out. CLG right there. Complexity had a couple of limbs early, but not the showing that they wanted. That's 3 kills. They got a squad wipe, and then an unfortunate finish for them. So TSM, Complexity, 2 teams. We're looking to bounce back strong in game number 2. Our last game of Kings Canyon. Will TSM be contested or not is the big question. We'll find out that or more as we, of course, are going to be jumping to a very quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some more Apex Legends and the PGL Showdown right after this.
Sorry, not sorry.
Welcome back, everybody, to the PGL Apex Legends Showdown. Fallout here, joined alongside Jamerson as we are live with the North American broadcast. Done with game one, done and dusted as we're getting ready for game number 2. Big question going into game number 2 really surrounds the TSM drop. I know a lot of us are talking about the fact that they were contested early. Onset thinks they will not be contested in game 2. Jamerson, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it really depends, and it's very difficult to call just because of the amount of drops that are here on Kings Canyon, right? There isn't as much real estate as we would have on a map like World's Edge, so it might be Season just continuing to drop down there, but right now, looking at things, you know, Season might have just seen it as a fluke, right? That they were full 3-man dropped on by TSM. They might play a little bit more conservative, take a building to the south instead of contesting that God spot up north. We'll see exactly how this one plays out, but this was one of the narratives that we really wanted to follow early on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'll see if we can follow that narrative again. Will Season decide to maybe chalk up their losses and drop somewhere else, or try and flex their muscles and say we can beat TSM? Tough team to beat, that is for sure. And we talked about TSM a little bit. They obviously got taken out a little bit early. So did Complexity. We talked a lot about in the pre-show, or sorry, before the break, about the teams that did well: Sentinels, NRG, Dudes Night Out, and so on and so forth. TSM, Complexity, what did not go so well for them in the mid game there, Jamerson?
Well, the fact is, they just had a really rough rotation timing. And for teams that did well, I mean, if we take a look at NRG have the old drop spot of TSM now. NRG called Cage home. They were the team that had the priority on rotations because they got to see early on that it was pulling to the west. They were able to play, I believe, over at Salvage afterwards when they rotated from Cage and picked up a lot of kill points from that area. It was just very unfortunate for them that the ring pulled so far south and got them out of their position. But still, taking a look at those 3 teams going, who ended up in the northern side of that map in the end circle, Sentinels, NRG, they did a fantastic job until they had to come to a head.
That's exactly right. And in the end, you can't be too mad. TSM 5th place with 9 total points. That's obviously well behind Dudes Night Out with 21, but one pop-off game could change that quite a bit for them, as Rogue is in 6th, CLG in 7th, and of course, Complexity of the teams that we kind of highlighted in the pre-show in 10th place. But then you got the likes of Euresis Daycare, Season, of course, Dudes Night Out, and so many other squads that you're used to watching. Aim Assist is a team that really started to heat up a lot in the summer circuit with some dominant performances. They won a championship, the Controller Gods themselves. They haven't had so much success thus far in the autumn circuit, Jamerson, and obviously thus far in game number 1. Any thoughts as to why?
I think for this one in particular, it's just because this was a rougher circle for them. Aim Assist is a team that can count on to be playing that map room spot. And when the rings end up pulling over towards the eastern side of the map, they are able to utilize it really well. The strength is, of course, having that map room scan, having the ability to know which teams are isolated, where fights are going to be safe for you to take. This is a team that likes to team fight, that wants to play for that instead of playing for positioning for the late games and such. And so they're not able to play towards their style. If we go on to the second map and we have a eastern ring, a southeastern ring, I think that's going to play more into their favor, especially because of their drop.
I love it. We'll see if that's the case for Aim Assist. They need a better game 2 to bounce back. And I want to also welcome back Onset and Gaskin into the analyst desk and make it a 4-man desk as we talk about some interesting things coming into game number 2, gentlemen. I want to take a look at the placement timeline. This is a board and a graphic that we don't get the luxury of getting so often. Look at this thing. Man, you get to see every single team, when they got taken out, at which time they got taken out, and of whom they got taken out by. This thing is awesome. Of course, Dudes Night Out wins it all. Sentinels in 2nd place. But you get to see the stamp, the impact that Dudes Night Out had in that lobby. They took out some big teams in Rogue, in Sentinels, and a few others. Onset, anything stick out to you here?
I'm actually going to ask Dan, because statistics are his thing. Whenever you throw numbers up at me, I could spend about 20 minutes trying to work out what's going on. But it's a fantastic graphic. So Dan, you're the smart one out of the two of us. This is all you.
Right, the yellow mark means
All
that
right, I get it.
we saw a few teams that were purposely waiting on the edge of circle to eliminate other teams to pick up that, I say quote-unquote free KP. It's not free KP, but certainly vulnerable teams pushing into that next circle. And you can see like a few names and a few teams are popping up regularly. So you know they are actively hunting kills. And of course, the early elimination of TSM winning that first drop. Like, are they going to be contested again? I think that is the really big question. Will we see the same graphic after game 2 and see TSM yet again eliminating someone? So honestly, I'm surprised that people are dropping on TSM, but I also am very impressed by how many teams and how many kills TSM were able to pick up in the early stages, despite being dropped on, despite that delay that Onset was talking about, where they have to spend a little extra time looting because they've been dropped on, but they were still able to get the loot, they were still able to get the kills.
Jamerson, anything from that graphic? Anything stick out to you in particular?
Nothing in particular. I think everything played out basically the way I expected. The only thing I really didn't expect was TSM able to pop off as much as they did, picking up those 8 kill points and still getting into at least placement points and getting that additional point for themselves. I think at this point, though, it's kind of you're wondering what other spots are left, right? If Season decides to continue to drop over there by Rivertown, like, will they continue to drop there? There isn't much real estate. Like, again, there aren't enough drops here on Kings Canyon, and at this point, were they did they spend this time looking at VODs to see, where is a free drop for them, or will they just continue to go head first into TSM?
I love it. We talked a lot about a few teams. One team I want to talk in particular about is Sentinels, and I know gameplay is about to start here. I'm going to put my production team on the spot. If you could pull up the Sentinels team card, that'd be awesome, because I'd like to take a look at the Sentinels roster. It's a team that we don't necessarily have a chance to talk about enough in the broadcast in the grand scheme of things. Part of that reason, well, they haven't necessarily been performing as well necessarily as the likes of a few other teams. Really, if you look there, TwitchCon San Diego, they took home a first place spot. That was a long time ago. That was actually a year ago, October 2019. They got 6th at the preseason invitational, and since then, they haven't necessarily had the top 1, top 2, top 3 finishes that they want in our online tournament series, but a good start so far. My question to you, Jamerson, is do you think Sentinels has what it takes to win their first major in a while?
They have been ramping up. Every single time we see them, they do better and better. And whenever we see them in the weeklies, they're just dominating lobbies. But it's about making everything align for them at this point. And I think that's the biggest trouble that Sentinels have always had. They can team fight, and they're starting to learn how to play more on edge. And this might be the tournament where this was one of the farthest circles for them, right? They, I believe, drop over at Slums. We had one of the most southern circles outside of the water treatment circle that would have really punched their rotations. But they've been able to live on the edge, quite literally, and have been succeeding already so far in map number 1.
I love it. One player on Sentinels I want to talk a bit about is Crust. Crust, of course, if I remember correctly, he's a former member of that E-United squad of Teenage and a few others. And of course, United no longer in the Apex scene, but Crust has got one of the people that got kind of picked up by a few top teams after that, and finally got the honor of being picked up by, yeah, you heard it. You better believe it, Sentinels, one of the biggest organizations in esports. Congratulations to Crust on that honor many months ago. Plays as Pathfinder, 11K in earnings, actually a residential Canadian. We got a few Canadians competing in Apex. Crust is one of them. Onset, Gaskin, either of you, what makes Crust so great as a player from when you've had a chance to watch him?
I mean, he's just one of these, these young talents that just kind of broke out. There was a group of players that kind of broke out, I would say, in the sort of second cycle of players that we saw getting involved in Apex Legends. We saw some players leave. We saw the new blood coming through, and he was one of those new blood. And he's just constantly impressed. And you have to look at the players he's alongside right now, and that just shows how impressive he has been to be on a roster with Retzi and with Senox. You have to be talented, and you also have to have quite thick skin and be able to take some constructive criticism from those two to be the best that you can. So he seems to have all the tools to be successful, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play in the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, big shoes to fill, high expectations joining that Sentinels roster and playing it along the likes of Retzi and Senox, two big players in their own right. So that said, guess what? Game 2 is ready. The dropship is loading. It's flying across the map right now. We are, of course, in our own separate dropship, but the main dropship, the one you care about, well, it's gameplay. Let's go ahead and throw it over to Onset and Gaskin to call the action for game number 2 on Kings Canyon.
All right, then. Game number 2 just around the corner. Thank you, as always, gentlemen. And just a reminder that the points is the first task on the board for all of these teams. 50 points is what they've got to hit to get onto that match point threshold. And the fact that Dudes Night Out have put up a huge 21-point win in that first game, Dan, is going to fill them with a huge amount of confidence moving forward to show that they can potentially move on to that match point pretty soon on in this lobby. But like we mentioned earlier, win that game number 1 and put some kills on the board. All of a sudden, you've got a target on your back.
You do, and also we have to remember that it's the format where you play twice on Kings Canyon, then twice on World's Edge. And as we saw in Europe yesterday, some teams better at Kings Canyon than they are at World's Edge. So our Dudes Night Out for example, a Kings Canyon team, can they get to the 50-point threshold, but then on World's Edge struggle, and they maybe have to wait until round 5 or 6 to pick up that victory? But most importantly, they have picked up a victory. I think that's something that we saw yesterday in Europe. There were some teams who were performing excellently, but they weren't maybe able to close things out, which means when you get in that match point format, are you realistically going to be able to actually get the victory, get that W in the end? But I'm excited to see how this one goes. TSM again on the drop. Are they contested is the real question. At the moment, it looks like they're alone.
Yeah, it looks like they've won that drop. And to be honest with you, I think that's not only smart from Season. I think it's great for TSM as well, because they're going to have to loot very quickly now. They're going to be able to get their rotation down, and they're not going to be too panicked about what's going to be happening for the rest of their time on Kings Canyon. So I think a good decision from Season for the rest of their elongated tournament to make sure that they get some good reps under their belt. No pun intended, of course, with reps on TSM, but some good reps under their belt on Kings Canyon is better than just fighting on drop and 50 and 50 in every time. So TSM winning that battle, winning this Central River position for their drop is going to be huge for them.
And I mean, I didn't get to touch on Crust earlier, and I know we're not watching them at the moment, we're just watching TSM, but Crust was one of those players, he's played a lot of character shooters with abilities, and as soon as there is any abilities that can come into the equation that he can use to gain an advantage over others, he's always going to find himself in a good spot. I think there's a lot of players who transition from certain games like Overwatch, for example, who are able to find success in Apex Legends, and I think it's great to see now him on a roster like Sentinels where he should be able to shine alongside 2 other great players. It's a similar circle, yet again, as you saw briefly, slightly southwestern more than it was in the previous, but definitely another southern pool.
Yeah, potentially a gauntlet-ish ending here for the teams, but both Salvage and Gauntlet involved, so wouldn't be surprised to see teams maybe set up around the crossroads if they're not 100% sure on where things will be pulling. And Irise's Daycare at the moment, got to be pretty careful with some shots are flying through that window and dropping the shields here of Serial. Will be able to pop that battery and get back up to full HP with the Vault in hand as well. Anyone who wants to push is certainly going to find some damage on their hands.
A little bit of damage taken, just white at the moment in terms of what actually shields they're able to connect with. One has been cracked, and it's just a case of, I think, warning shots at the moment with the flatline, trying to keep people at bay, seeing if they can get any decent damage, and I imagine there'll be a push that comes through if they're able to actually crack someone, get someone down, and DK do look like they want to be the aggressors here.
Yeah, Swamp's obviously a bigger area, and not surprising to see multiple teams actually drop over here with the amount of buildings and loot pool that is available. But just having a quick look at the kill feed here, we can see that aim assists are in there, and Dudes Night Out, the winners of our game #1, and the team who are actually fighting this battle here against Irise's Daycare. And at the moment, you're looking at Duplex's shields on the Wraith as he has to go into the void to get out of trouble. They look like they're on the receiving end of the fight here.
Yeah, and I wonder if game 1 they've already had this fight and they already know that Dudes Night Out are dropping there with them and they want to take them out early because of how well they performed in game 1. That's already 2 down for Dudes Night Out, and it soon could be a 3rd and a total wipe if they're not careful, and there it is. That is going to be the winners from game 1 taken out immediately in game #2 here.
Yeah, that certainly is a statement there from Irise's Daycare. Looking at the kill feed again, and aim assist very heavily involved. It looks like they might have won their battle early on. HRN set up inside of Circle, feeling very, very comfortable as we move over to Drone Cam here, just outside of Gauntlet, just trying to scan out some areas that are free to rotate in. And speaking of aim assist, we'll see the remnants of that fight. It will be death boxes that they're picking up, so obviously aim assist with early KP on the board.
Early KP, and that's always a good thing. I mean, it's certainly looking at the leaderboard and like how the kind of KP related to the placement points, aside from TSM.
Okay.
Yeah, relax. I'm trying to talk
I
about
love it.
KP and their teabagging, but I'm okay with it. I'm all for it. Like, I just love a little bit of body disrespect. NRG, though, they want to get up and close and personal, and they want to get involved in this fight here, Mark.
Yeah, speaking of disrespect to that door, got his head kicked in, and now the massive shots aren't going to be landing here from Frex, and they finally will do, and NRG win their fight then. So big performance from NRG again at the start of this game. A clean wipe across the board. I just want to touch on Frex here because Frex has been playing some phenomenal Apex in the last month or so. Some of the best Apex that I've ever seen him play. So I really think as a player, we talk about Nathan, we talk about Rocker on this NRG lineup. I think Frex is the X factor here. He has stepped his game up to a level that I haven't seen from him in a long time. Really excited to see what he can do on this NRG roster.
Well, I was trying to say earlier about the leaderboard in terms of kills relating to placement. I mean, the top 3 teams, they all got 9 kills, right? And they all performed well. Then it was just like TSM and Liquid, they also got a lot of kills, but they didn't place necessarily very highly. But you can see that Europe yesterday, the correlation between getting to the late game and picking up KB was quite high. We're not seeing as many teams now survive to the late game and just not looking for kills whatsoever, just going for those placement points. And I think that is down to, oh my goodness gracious, hitting those shots across the map. Petty Boss will fall, and Expensive Agents put more KP on the board. But with the circles being a little bit more random now, people are more inclined to take those fights and pick up those points when they're there and available.
Expensive Agents. No shots, got the knock. Didn't manage to get the finish though, so not going to be able to finish that off. CLG though, making their way all the way from airbase now into Gauntlet. Man, this is going to be under fire though. He's going to have to go into the void here just to back up to his teammates to get a little bit of cover and protection to pop that shield battery and get his HP back up. But CLG have found themselves in a pretty comfortable position here. You can see just on the north side of Gauntlet, inside of where that circle's going to be pulling. And the other side of things, Season, the team who lost the challenge to TSM early on in game number 1, are looking a lot more healthy here in game 2.
I'm sure that was a breath of fresh air for TSM as well when they weren't dropped on, because that could have been a concerning tournament if they were consistently being challenged by Season. But a smart move, as you say, from Season to make sure that they're not putting themselves in that situation where they are constantly having to worry about another team. But of course, they may have ended up dropping on someone else. That is always the thing when you change your drop spot. As Sentinels, who performed so well in the previous game, they were also in a little bit of an engagement here. Nice fire from Retzi, and he should be able to get this down, to be honest, even with the Wraith trying to ditzy doodle his way out. It's not going to be far enough.
Yeah, that's going to be a clean wipe there from Sentinel. You can see already 2 KP to the hands of the Wraith of Retzi. So big shots from the Hemlock. We know all about the Hemlock now and the damage that that thing does. Such a strong burst fire weapon that's found its way quite high up in the weapon pool for a lot of these players. Does a lot of damage, a medium to long range, but also at short range. That hip fire really is devastating. Aim assist then, making their rotation around edge of that second circle as well. A little bit of an earlier rotation than normal. Normally we might assume aim assist will make, but they're looking pretty comfortable at the moment, making their way into this little building here, step by step, as they try to make their way into a safe position.
So down to 15 squads, everyone's picked up 1 placement point in this top 15. Of course, then that changes to 2 once you're into the top 10, and then you start to get the big boy points as you get towards the top 5. Realistically, for aim assist at this point, they're in a good spot. I mean, they found themselves a nice little building to hold down. They've got a lot of viewing angles, but also they can be shot from a lot of different places.
I think they're trying to decide here where they want to play. Do they want to try and hold out these teams that might be rotating in late? And there's the ping going out towards that tri-choke from the middle of the map. So it looks like aim assist here deciding they want to play edge. They want to wait for those teams rotating in and take those fights. We know how devastating that they are, the controller players in those 3v3 fights when they get up close and personal and playing to their strengths. And aim assist is working well for them here in game 2.
HRN maybe in a little bit of a spot of bother. Certainly someone was nearby having a couple of shots, but they seem to have set up camp as well. A lot of teams now within this circle, and more than happy to wait for the oncoming players who are still outside and rotating in. NRG got themselves a nice vantage point as well. And long-range weapons to work with. Longbow in the hands of Nappen, and well, it looks like you like that, mate. They're trying to traverse the map, but they're under a little bit of pressure whilst doing so.
Yeah, the Golden Sands not looking so golden right now, as the Gibraltars are going to be exchanging defensive bombardments and bubbles. So it's a little bit of a Gibraltar off at the moment, as you see Rakanisshu now on the Gibraltar trying to find an angle with that 3 times on the R301 to try and land some shots. But speaking of landing shots, never be the meat in the sandwich, and that's at the moment what Sentinels are trying to feast on as they make their way in now, having got that crack and looking at the kill feed as well. It looks like Imperial How, it looks like TSM and Complexity are potentially in a fight here, as How does get the knock. Initially, it looks like they haven't been able to move in and potentially finish off that fight, but TSM making their way in as well. And although they have got that knock, they did actually get the finish as well. So excuse me, Shiny has gone down. Complexity now down to a 2-man.
I mean, Complexity versus TSM, if I'm completely honest, Mark, that is a sandwich I would happily be part of the meet, because what a battle this is always going to be. A 3 versus 3 between some of the best players in Apex Legends, but it's now a 3 versus 2 with that early elimination. Sentinel still trying to manage to survive at this point. Bubble down, Retzi's been able to heal up, so they've just about survived. it was looking a little bit shaky for them, but I think they've stabilized at this point.
I mean, what a trifecta of teams to be posturing up against each other here. You've got Sentinels, you've got TSM, you've got Complexity, all making a very similar rotation here from Golden Sands, as now you're going to see Sentinels back up to Bunker Town, just outside of Bunker, of course. That's why it's named so. And they're going to get that beacon. Should say, excuse me, they're going to get the tag and take that potentially to the beacon to get themselves back up and get Shiny back into this game as a full three-man roster. Nathan with that longbow gets the down onto flanker in the kill feed as well from Liquid. So the longbow proving effective, as we're seeing numerous teams trying to play around a similar position here on the edge of circle. And the question for me is, did Sentinels think about this? Did they think, they realized that Complexity had a player knock there? They were going to have to try and get a res to get him back in the game. And is that why they retreated to that little area? Maybe thinking about potentially setting up a little trap here on that beacon.
You'd imagine that someone on the team is going to be watching the kill feed. Like, that should be somebody's job. Usually if you're playing at LAN, you'd have a coach who would be there saying, okay, well, this team has lost this many players and yada, yada, yada. But you adapt in the online situation. That should be their job to make sure they're aware of who's alive. I know it's very difficult when you're in midst of fight, but I think they should have had their eyes, and you might be right. They might be planning for a little bit of a trap here. We had a brief glimpse of Rogue as well. They had a relatively quiet game one. I know they finished 4th, but they didn't get many kills. They were the only really outlier when I was talking about like high kills getting to the end of the game in terms of placement points. They placed well. They only picked up 2 KP. I'd like to see them get a little bit more kills in this next game.
Well, Sentinels still patrolling the outside of this zone. You can see Retzi is just desperate to try and find any kind of engagement. Unfortunately for him, the only thing he's going to find is the end of a triple take. However, poor old Monsoon is going to find the Hemlock, and it's going to hit him harder than a hammer would as he gets down. Retzi now the kill leader with 3 kills to his name. Reptar going down as well, and I believe that that is now the end of Complexity. Well, there might be one more player desperately trying to scoot away. The Gibraltar player is in front of him. Not sure if that is a Complexity member, or if that's another team who's come to try and join the party.
I think that might have been another team, because it went down from 15 to 14 as the final member of Complexity fell. Either way, they are not in a good position if there is one remaining player. Sentinels in another engagement. I think it's you like that, mate, on the other side of it. It is. So Complexity were eliminated, and you like that, mate? Well, it looks like they want to get aggressive here. They want to take on this fight. Do they know it's Sentinels, though? Because Sentinels are not a team that you want to be pushing on.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be pushing for much longer, because Senox is just absolutely crunched Crummy with that Mastiff in hand, and here comes the rest. That is a clean wipe from Sentinels. More KP on the board for them, and I tell you what, Sentinels are looking extremely dangerous in these team fights so far here in game number 2 and game number 1 as well. Sentinels, certainly keep your eyes out as we move through this tournament.
Yeah, remember, Sentinels on 18 points coming into this second game, so if they can get to the latter stages of this with the amount of KP they've already picked up, they are starting to creep to that 50-point match point threshold already. We might be seeing teams on 50 points as we get into match 3 even, if not match 4 most likely. As TSM still alive, still healthy, and still pushing on in. They've taken down 1 member. It looks like elsewhere, Rogue are also taking a fight against Liquid. You've just got all these giants colliding at the moment, Mark.
Yeah, it's just what you want to see. Everybody throwing down here on game number 2. TSM picking up those KP and having to back up as well. NRG. Looks like they've just won a fight as well against aim assist as well, and that's never an easy thing to do. They did lose Frex momentarily, but they're right next to a beacon and on edge of zone as well, so they should be able to get him in pretty comfortably. And of course, they're going to be those death boxes there for him to get back his inventory and those weapons and meds that he needs to make some progression. However, might slow down their rotation a little bit. As we know, they're going to be pretty comfortable playing edge of zone themselves. HRN just outside of where that next zone is going to be moving. As I say that, they fly through the air, through the portal, and find themselves inside
Be something good this way.
of where that ring 4 will be pulling. Rogue will have to make their moves as well, but at the moment they're in a great position to gatekeep all of these teams coming in from the eastern side of the map.
Down to 10 squads, every team got 2 placement points, and really the front runners now, with Dudes Night Out and Team Liquid being eliminated in the early stages of this game, Sentinels, NRG, TSM, Rogue, they are all going to be looking to try and take that top spot as we have a little glimpse of the kill leaders. So NRG performing well, but look at those kills from Sentinels. 3 of their members, 8 KP already in this game. So imagine if they get to the latter stages here, if they can get into those final fights, you'd assume another 3, 4, maybe even 5 kills. There is a lot of points up for grabs if Sentinels continue their consistency.
Well, there's a big fight going down here, and it's NRG involved again, and it's Fresh with that Mastiff who's hitting some big shots. He will be down, so it all falls onto the shoulder now of Rocker, but he falls as well. And here comes TSM, looking for that third-party opportunity. You can see How flying in with a Prowler in his hands, trying to finish off these kills, trying to look for those knocks. One player alive here, hasn't managed to get the revive, I believe, onto his teammates. Does get the Brave shots in, How will go down, and now it falls onto the shoulders of Snipedown, as all of a sudden the third party turns into a bad day out here for TSM.
Snipedown's been able to get the armor swap though, and if you can trust anyone in a 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, it's going to be Snipedown. And he's having a look around, he's saying, wait, well, where did he fall to? Did he fall off the map? Well, he's gone now. See you later, pal. Going for a little bit of a skinny dip. And Snipedown, I'm sure, will just be laughing his head off as the TSM boys, they pushed in and they were so scared they fell off the map.
I mean, it was a scary moment though for TSM as well. They've only got 40 seconds or so to make their move inside of the ring, and maybe TSM thinking, yes, we got a super tough rotation to have to make here. So therefore, any third-party opportunity that we can get KP on the board, we're going to try and do so. So Lafide now, trying to take down this team that's underneath them, looking to land some massive shots, and a Thermite potentially being ready to be gently rolled under this staircase, and it's Sentinels who are the team who are underneath and coming under all sorts of fire from grenades, from frag grenades, and the bubble going down is going to give them protection. That is why you play the Gibraltar. Gives you those few moments to reset, gives you those few moments to just get those heals off. However, they're not going to be given those moments, so Pride's going to push it down with the ball.
Yes, and Speading just pushing in, and they knew they'd got so many hits. However, one has fallen, make that 2, and this is quite the response from Sentinels. And Sentinels somehow survive, but are they going to be able to survive the potential third party? Senox is getting out of dodge. He's done his job, he's got the kills. Now you've got to play for those placement points.
I can't believe what Senox just did. I don't know how he won that fight, but Senox must have hit some big numbers on those Mastiffs. Huge moment in this game as TSM now make their rotation in. They hit that balloon, and it's going to be Reps sniped down. And Imperial How up on top of this banner here. A great position to look down and potentially farm some KP, as all these teams are going to be pretty much fishing a barrel for them as they look down above. And look at the ring pool now. They're going to have to move as well, but these teams in front of them, well, if they've got the ammo and the nous on them to push, they should be free KP on the board.
Xenox has fallen, Sentinels are out, but now TSM are diving straight on in. They had to return to battle from where they were. Snipedown, yes, the controller in hand, and he's hitting his shots as he always is. And TSM are just looking so deadly at the moment. They've managed to take down so much, but it looks like they may fall if they're not too careful here. They need to heal up.
Yeah, How did a great job there. There was a third party come in, I believe, and it was Rogue who were the third party. So Sweet takes down Imperial How. Reps is the last alive, I believe, but there's 2 players alive, 3 players, excuse me, as Lewis also still in this game for Rogue. They were the third party to the third party. And now Rogue making their move in. They had a great performance in game number 1 as far as placements was concerned, and now they're putting some KP on the board as well.
I wonder whether TSM managed to get away with 2 or just 1. If we can get a switch over to them to see how many and how healthy they are, that would be great. Because even with 2, I'd say TSM could be in an alright spot. Yet they've got Snipedown as well, and they've got Reps. So okay, this is not too detrimental for TSM, but they are in a position where they have just been cornered. So actually, it is pretty detrimental, and Rogue, they taste blood here, and they are diving straight on in. Snipedown will go down, but it looks like there's still 1 remaining. Reps has managed to get away.
Yeah, Reps has managed to get into the top 4 as well, and Reps is doing some heroes work here for TSM to push up those placement points. And you've got to think, if he can walk in with this ring, and there's other fights going to be going down in front of him, so he might be able to bide his time. Every single second counts here for Reps. He has to just be careful of this team potentially rotating in front of him. But as we watch Reps, other fights are going to be breaking out here, and Season, the team who contested TSM, might be the team who can take out TSM in the end game here, as Reps is the last player alive. He'll be taken down. Oh, sorry, excuse me, Reps actually takes down Sweet, so Reps will be somehow still in this game towards the end, and I believe CLG now, as Reps is going to be finally taken down, will be going up against Season in a straight 3v3, and there's a Peacekeeper in the hands here of a CLG member as well.
Yeah, CLG doing really well. They have everything at the moment. They've got the weapons, they've got the armor, and they've got the victory, have CLG TSM and Reps, he did well to just sneak on in and be a little bit of a distraction and take down one of the players of Rogue, but it was the two strengthened squads who had all three members still remaining that were able to take down that final battle, and CLG just swooping in out of nowhere. They were perfectly positioned, poised to take that victory mark.
Yeah, an interesting rotation there from CLG as well. Like we said, they moved all the way through Airbase, the very western side of the map. They really did kind of shine their way down there through to Gauntlet, where they held up for pretty much the entirety of that game. But a really interesting game as far as points is concerned, because we saw the likes of Sentinels, TSM, huge KP on the board. Rogue with decent placement was in KP as well. And then, of course, we've seen CLG get that win on the board with a couple of kills at the end. I mean, it's a very interesting one, because I really do feel like those points are going to be shared